LVCVA, and I would have loved to have had the opportunity to vote yes on that bill as a standalone measure. I also support creating new jobs in our state, and I can also support a professional football team moving to Las Vegas. But you know what, colleagues? What I cannot support is how this bill is written and how it was written and passed out of our chambers, which ultimately makes my constituents liable for close to $1.2 billion for a stadium they're likely never ever going to be able to afford a ticket to get into. I understand the arguments that taxes on tourists are some of the best projections, and that I don't disagree and dispute the notion that we should have one of the largest public allocations into a U.S. stadium that this country has ever seen. I do disagree and dispute that we should be a state with the largest public allocation into a U.S. stadium when that trend is fading. We're no longer seeing a large subsidy coming from the public going into private stadiums, privately run stadiums. And the Senate, my colleagues here and in the Senate have talked about what this money could go to, and I'm just not gonna say it should just go to education. I think a lot of my colleagues have already articulated what this money could also go to. But this is simply about doing the right thing. The vote for me was about doing the right thing for my constituency. Make no mistake that this bill was loaded up politically to make it very hard to vote no. This bill isn't a standalone bill because the LVCVA expansion would pass and the stadium would probably fail. And this bill has been political since its inception. There's no need for a stadium to be built. If this was such a great investment and such a great opportunity, then private investment would be jumping up at that opportunity. After all, we are Las Vegas. But instead, we're being asked to put limited tax dollars into a stadium for undefined return, and for what? I'm sympathetic to the argument that it will bring new jobs and help people get back to work. I also don't think that robbing Peter to pay Paul is the way to do it. If we were serious in our state about ensuring a veteran doesn't remain homeless and that those that want to keep their jobs can keep working, then we'd invest in more programs for them. We just wouldn't hope that a $750 million tax giveaway finds its way down as a side benefit for someone who really needs the help. Not when over the last 20 years, the studies of almost every sports economist has consistently found substantial evidence that there's no increased jobs, incomes, or tax revenues. Rather than spend $1 billion on a stadium, I'd be better off giving money directly to our constituents with the only caveat that they actually spend the money. And when we talk about return on investment for constituents, what is it? Do we get a revenue from ticket sales? Do we get the revenue from a Beyonce concert in the stadium? Do we get to sell the personal seat licenses? My constituents, as owners of this building, will get to own sitting in traffic jams around the stadium and own the liability for the mortgage, but we will not hit our capacities to pay for the stadium. I get it. The easy thing to do is to vote yes, what would have been to vote yes. But I'm not buying into the angry rhetoric that has been already articulated by many members in this body that we have encountered all this week. We have to come here and do the people's work and think about our constituencies. And for me, if we want to support union jobs and construction, as I certainly do, we'd invest in our roads, schools, and crumbling infrastructure and take on projects that transform Las Vegas. That gets us better returns and benefits for all our constituents, not just a privileged few. And lastly, I was opposed to this bill because in its heart, it comes down to one fundamental question. Can I vote to give $750 million of taxpayer money away for a hope and a prayer instead of a good, sound investment? And I couldn't. I couldn't for every one of my constituents that would be responsible for it, and I can't when the need is not there. Private stadiums can be built. Stadiums that give the public a better return on investment can be built, but make no mistake, if the Raiders begin to try to move to Las Vegas, and if we one day have a professional football team in Southern Nevada, we'll be paying for it. And a lot of people outside of my constituents will be getting paid off of it, and I just couldn't morally support that.